In this video, we're going to be talking about limb stops. Limb stops for the Bowtech bows, the Diamond bows, and some of the private label bows that Bowtech has made for companies such as Cabela's, Bass Pro Shops. The two draw stops that we have for the limb stops, we're going to be talking the BM and the AM. Some of the bows that it's going to fit are like your Bowtech Carbon Icon, your Diamond Medalist, Diamond Deploy, just about any of the diamonds that still use the limb stops, or Bowtechs that still use the limb stops. We're going to talk about installing those stops, adjusting those stops, and then we're also going to go over some real world numbers so you know what to expect when you install these stops. For the Bowtech and Diamond limb stop bows, we offer the size AM and the size BM. Each kit includes 2 stops and the mounting hardware. We also offer the ABM Pro Pack, which includes the AM stops, the BM stops, and 1 set of mounting hardware. The AM stop has the factory size on it, which would be the 3-dot side. This stop also allows you to go 1 setting where you would increase the holding weight and 2 settings to decrease the holding weight and draw length. The BM would be a continuation of the AM. It's a larger stop. The BM would either increase the holding weight even more than the AM can, and also be used in the long pegging applications where we want to decrease the holding weight and let the cam roll over a little bit more. We start with the BM and then work our way down to the AM. So let's go ahead and upgrade this factory stop. First thing we need to do is make a template that represents the limb, because we need to orientate our stops and how they're going to contact the limb. Our stops have 4 different sides on them, so we need to actually get the stop orientated in the correct position on the cam so it contacts at full draw in the correct position. This is not very hard to achieve. It's just a detail that we need to pay attention to. So what we're going to do is we're going to take just an ordinary recipe card, and we're going to cut a V into one side of the card. The V needs to be large enough to either go around the axle, or in this case there's a spacer on the axle, and we'll want to go around that spacer. So with that V cut out, we can slide the card onto the cam and onto that spacer. And as you can see, it rotates around that spacer just as if the cam would be rotating in comparison to the limb. So with it there, we need to trace the limb out on the inside of the bow. And then we just need to cut the template on that line. In this case, since it's so straight, we're going to mark the side that we're going to use. And as you can see, if we put that in to the limb again, bring that down, you can see how that represents our limb. And you can see that this would represent drawing the bow all the way back to the stop. Now we want to mark where the factory stop is. Mark it on this side and just transfer it to the opposite side as well. So we're going to use that mark for one thing, and that is to place our felt pads on the inside of the limb. We need to place the template back in the bow, rotate it around like it was. Now this mark is where that limb stop is going to contact the bow at full draw. So what we'll do is we'll take a piece of tape. We're just going to put that tape about in the center of that mark. This doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to be super precise, because we have a fair amount of forgiveness with that felt. The next thing we're going to do is look at how wide our limb is compared to the felt. And if you look here, the felt, we need about 3/4 of that felt, not the complete width of it. So we need to cut that felt down so that it matches the thickness of that limb. The easy way to do that is just to take a razor blade, line it up, and I said I want about 3/4 of that width. Hold it down about how you want it. Just tap with a hammer. And that'll make a nice cut in that felt. Now let's go ahead and install the felt where the tape is marking the position. So as you can see, we line the inside of the felt up with the edge of the felt up with the inside of the limb. and we had cut the felt down to about the same thickness as the limb. We send them thick because this is kind of a universal kit, so you might have a limb that is thicker here than what this one is. This happens to be a very thin one, so we just had to cut it down. Now that we have the template made, let's get rid of this factory stop and put our upgrade on. It's a 7/64 Allen wrench, pretty simple. Just unscrew it. We're not going to use the factory bolt, so set all that aside. We're going to do this setup as the factory setup with the new stop. So we're going to firm the wall up. We're going to maintain the correct draw length, but we are going to firm the wall up because we're going to put a stop on the top, stop on the bottom, and we're also going to get rid of the rubber and the O-ring that is on the factory stop. Now, having a stop on the top and the bottom is going to do two things for you. It's going to obviously firm the bow up because the two cams won't be able to rotate. The other thing it's going to do is it's going to allow you to time this bow at full draw. That's very important on the binaries. If you've ever emailed me or talked to me, the first thing I always tell you is make sure your cams are timed at full draw. If they're not, I have found the binaries to be, they just do not draw very nice. It's just not a very good feeling bow. So with two stops, you'll now be able to do that with this bow. With the original factory stop, you won't be able to do it. So we can get our template again because we have to line up the edge we're going to use. And the edge we're going to use is the 3-dot edge of the stop. As you can see, there's 3 dots engraved on it. That's the 3rd largest side of the stop, and that's what we determined is the factory size for this bow. Now we rotate the template to contact the edge of the stop, and we want them to be tangent. So the stop can be like that, or it can be like that a little bit. It doesn't matter because all of our stops, every radius is centered on that bolt. And that's going to do two things. It makes it easier to set up, and it's not going to put any off-centered force. All the force is going to be applied towards that bolt at full draw. So it's not going to be trying to loosen or tighten the bolt up as the pressure is applied. So we tighten it down, and we just double check that we're still tangent. And we're going to check that we're still tangent, and we look good. So we're done installing this. And like I said, that's going to firm the bow up, and it's going to allow us to actually time that bow with 2 stops at full draw. And again, we're going to do the exact same thing to the bottom cam in the same spot. So the bow is set at the factory draw length, the factory let off, and the factory valley length. Let's say we want to decrease all that. We have one position left on this stop, which would be the 4-dot side, because what we're going to do is increase the stop diameter. And to move that, all we have to do is loosen it up, grab our template again, and make sure that side is tangent to the template. Tighten it back down. Do the same thing to the bottom. And there you've had it. You move, just shorten it up a little bit. If you want to go more than that, then what we want to do is take this stop out, and we want to use the BM stop. And the BM stop will pick up right where the AM left off. And again, we're in module position 3. We want our stop into stop position 3. We tighten it down, and we're going to use the smallest side on the BM. That'll be our next progression. It'll be 1 dot, and we tighten that down. And now we just shorten it up a little bit more. And we can continue this on all the way to the 4-dot side. There's going to be a point in here where it's just kind of going to become unshootable, but we'll go over some more of those numbers a little later. And it all depends on your draw length, what bow it is, the module position, if you're in performance or comfort. So this is all to shorten it. If we want to lengthen the bow, we can again go back to the A stop, and we had two positions left on the A stop. We had the 1-dot position and the 2-dot position. So after the factory position, which was the 3 dots, we would go back to the 2-dot position and then 1-dot position. Now if that's not still long enough for you, or enough valley, or enough let off, what we need to do then is long peg the bow. And when we're long pegging the bow, what we're going to do is we're going to take the stop, and we're actually going to go into the hole 1 longer than what our module is set at. So this one, the module is set at number 3, and our stop was set at 2. We're going to actually set it in 3. But we're going to start with the BM, and we're going to start with the BM in the largest position that it can be, which is the 4-dot side. And what that does is that just brings the progression from where the AM was originally, and it lets the cam roll over a little bit more. So we would do the same thing here, is line it up with our template, tighten it down, we'd shoot it. If we want more, we go to the 3, the 2, the 1. If that's not enough, then we can continue on to the A. And again, we're long pegging, so we're going to be in the number 2 position, and our module is in a number 3 position, and we want to start with the largest diameter on that stop, which is a 4. Just like that. Tighten it down, and again, you're going to run into a point where this is way too much valley and it kind of becomes unshootable. So that's how we make the adjustments. We go shorter, we increase the stop size, we have one more on the A, and then we get into the B. If we want to go longer, we've got 2 more options on the A, and then we go into long pegging and we use the B. So we start with the B and then drop down to the A. So that kind of wraps up what we can do with it. Let's get to some of the real world numbers, what we found with this. Again, top and bottom stops, same thing. Time your bow at full draw. So let's talk about some numbers on what we achieved with the bow. And we used a Bowtech Carbon Icon, and it was set at 56 pounds. And the first set of numbers is for the comfort setting. So we put the factory stop on, and with the factory stop, our holding weight was 11.2 pounds. And that's what it takes to draw the bow back to full draw and where it rolls into the onto the stop. And the front, the secondary, I would call it, going forward, went to 8.3 pounds. So there is quite a bit of lag on this bow, but it's not too noticeable. It does seem to shoot fairly well. And the AM stop, we put 2 of these on, the top and the bottom, and it's the 3-dot side. That's what we determine as our factory side. If you actually measure with a caliper, you're going to notice it's a little different than the factory stop, but we applied the felt to the limb of the bow, so when you all put that together, it comes out to the same thing as the factory. 11.2 pounds there again, and it was 8.4, so that's probably scale error. But what did we gain here? We didn't gain anything on our length. So our length changed nothing. And what I do is I add more poundage to the bow on the holding weight. So I add 1 pound, 2, 3, 4, and 5 pounds. And then I measure how far the string actually moves. This is the best way I can describe the wall to you. Otherwise, it's kind of subjective to the person. Is, oh yeah, it feels like a firmer wall, but really, how is it different? So with the factory stop, we're compressing the rubber on the stop and the O-ring. Plus, we only have 1 stop, so our second cam that is not stopped, that can move a little bit. Doesn't move a lot, but it can move a little. And so we added 1 pound, so now we're at 12.2 pounds. We moved 1/32 of an inch with the factory stop, and the AM moved 1/64. So we did half the length of that. And that stayed true pretty close to once we got to 3 pounds. So now we're pulling into that bow at 14.2 pounds, and then it moved 3/32. This is at 4 pounds. 3/32 on the factory stop, and it only moved 1/32 on the AMs. And then at 5 pounds it was about 1/8 of an inch and 5/64 on the other stop. So we're about 1/3 of the actual string movement. So this is actually pulling 16.2 pounds. With the factory stop, you pull the string back an extra 1/8 inch. With the AM stops, again 2, one on top, one on bottom, you only move back 5/64 of an inch. So it's quite a bit of an improvement there. It definitely gives you that firm feel and the definite, oh, I'm to the stops, not, it's kind of there, kind of not. The factory stops are not terrible on this bow, but there is definitely a difference. Now let's talk about shortening the bow. So what we're going to do is we're going to increase our stop, and we were on module number 3, which is 29 inches, and our stops so far we're all on number 3 also. So we've got another stop or another spot on the AM. We've got the 4-dot side, and that went to 11.4 pounds of holding weight, and our draw length shortened by 1/16. And then what we need to do is we need to switch to the BMs, still in a number 3. So it's the same as your draw length, 29 inches, your module's at number 3. And that goes to 10.9 pounds. And that shortened it up 3/32 of an inch. And then we go to, that's 1 dot, 2, 3, 4. We go to 11, 11, 11.2. And if you look here, you're going to notice something a little bit odd. And I noticed that when I was looking at this, when I was testing this cam. And 5/16. So at the end of the BM, we're at 11.2 pounds, and we lost 5/16 of draw length. So we're actually at the same holding weight, but in the middle here, our holding weight dropped down. And if you watch the scale, you actually see that on the bow. When you roll into the stops, it actually drops down a little bit, and then the holding weight goes up a little bit. You know, if you really notice that when you're shooting it, I don't know, but it gives you a very easy, because the valley is so flat, it gives us a lot of ability to adjust our draw length and fine tune that, and not increase the holding weight. So from here we still have a little bit more we can go before we actually end up in the pig hole in front of it. And we go to the number 4 pig hole. So this is at the 28.5 draw length. I didn't talk about this in the setup. This is opposite of long pegging. We're short pegging. But since our factory stop starts on the 3-dot side, before we actually continue a full revolution to where we go down to the 3-dot side on the stop, on the one hole completely in front of it, we still have 3 settings from the AM4 before we complete it, a full lap on this stop per se. And well, so we can go into the 28.5 inch, which would be the number 4, and we would start at 1 dot. So we're starting with the smallest side on that, and that went to 12.4 pounds of holding weight, and that was minus 3/8 of an inch. And I continued that all the way down to 4, and it stayed at about 12.3, 13, 13.1, and 7/16, 15/32, and then we're at almost minus -1/2 inch, just short of that. But that is actually a complete cycle through the stops. Our other stops we start at 1 dot, so we would not go into the peg in front of it. But in this case, that you have to get back to where your factory stop would have been. if that makes any sense. But it's the same thing as long pegging, only we're going shorter, and these are numbers, but you can kind of see here where our poundage starts creeping up. So it wasn't bad in here, but you know, I would recommend kind of staying up at the BM, maybe get into here with the 1 dot if you're going to shorten it. So that's shortening it. So to lengthen it, we still have 2 more settings left on the AM stop, and again we'd be back in the number 3 stop position. So it's back at 29 inches, it's matching your module. And our results of that were, we would start with the 2 dot side because 3 is factory. So we're 2 dot, we're going smaller with the stop, we're letting the cam roll over further. And our holding weight was still 11.2. And we went to add 1/16 of an inch in draw length, and then we go to number 1. We're going backwards, so we go from big to small, and that went to 11.3, and that added 3/32 of draw length. And then we got to get into long pegging this. So now we're going to be, this is the AM stop. Now we're going to be using the BM, and we're going to be in the number 2 position. So now we're at the 29.5 inch draw length in the peg, but we're still at the 29 in the module. So we're long pegging, and we want to start on the big side. So it's a BM, 4 dots, 3, 2, 1, and then what we had for results of that, 11.4 holding weight, 11.5, 12.1, 12.4, and then our draw length went 5/32, 1/4, 5/16, 3/8, and then also we can drop down to the, still in the number 2, but we will drop to the AM, 4 dots, and that will go to 12.5, and that'll be a little longer than 3/8. So the reason we go to this again is because our stop starts at 3 and not 1. So don't let that confuse you, but basically we're long pegging, we're starting with the largest size and we're moving down. But if you look here, it's a little different because we're going longer, but our holding weight is going up on this particular bow. A lot of bows you'll see that start to drop down, but as I mentioned back here, this cam has got a little bit different draw cycle to it as it comes into the, you know, it almost drops down and then kind of creeps back up again before it spikes. So your valley sits in here, and as you go back, you know, maybe your factory's here, and as we go shorter we have a little less holding weight, and back here we just increase it a little more. A little different than what's typical. So I did this on performance also. This was on comfort. Performance numbers, performance of bow is a lot different. If you've shot the Bowtechs on performance, you know it's a bit different. The first thing to note is that your draw length changed about, this is performance, and it's still at 29 inches, but our draw length increased about 3/8 of an inch off the bat. So yeah, it's definitely a different. And on performance, we've got the factory stop, and that was at the 3 dots. So this is the AM 3 dots. And that was holding 14 pounds. And the forward was 12.3 on that. So it's still there. but it's at a fairly high holding weight, so it's not too noticeable. And obviously we have 0 in the draw length change from factory. And we'll talk about shortening this right away. So we've got one left on the AM, and that's 4 dots. Again, this is at number 3 with the stops, number 3 with the modules, and at shortening it up just a little bit, went to 15.1 pounds of holding weight, and our draw length went -1/16. And when we went to the BVs, or BMs, sorry, and it's 1 dot, that would be the next progression, still in the number 3. That went to 15.6 pounds, and it went -3/30 seconds. I'm going to go all the way down to the 4 dots here. You know, obviously there's numbers in between there I have. And at 4 dots, we're at 18 pounds, and we're down 5/16 of an inch. So things happen a little bit lazier on the performance with this bow, except for the holding weight. When you're shortening it, it really spikes up. So I would recommend, if you're on performance, we want to go longer. We typically don't have people requesting to go shorter on performance because a lot of times the bow is just a little too much for them to handle. So to go longer, we're still in the number 3. We're back to the AM stop, and we have 2 dots left, and we have 1 dot. And at 2 dots, we drop down to 13.4 pounds of holding weight, and we added 1/16 of an inch in draw length. 1 dot, we drop to 12.7 and plus 1/8 of an inch. So we are actually able to get that holding weight down with this bow. Not every cam is the same, so this is just for the Bowtech Carbon Icon again. And then after this, what we need to do is we need to start long pegging it. So we're going to be in the number 2 spot, which is a 29.5 inch. We're going to put the BMs in, and then we're going to start with 4 dots. So we're starting with the large side again, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that went 12.5 pounds, and it pretty much stayed at 12.5 down to this. Here we're going to go to the AM after that, also number 2, but it's going to be on 4 dots, and that was still at 12.5 pounds. So it's fairly flat. Once we get from the 14.1, we can get down to 12.5, and it stays there. It's really flat. This is again on the performance, and when we were said and done, we added 5/16 of an inch. So like I said, it's a little bit lazier on performance than it is on comfort. But yeah, the idea would be comfort. I would shorten, go for shortening the draw length. If you're on performance and you want to go shorter, then I would recommend running down to the 28.5 with your module and actually lengthening it out to 28.75, let's say. So now that I completely confused you with all the numbers, I hope I didn't. I hope it starts to make sense. I'm going to do more videos just on long pegging and short pegging, and actually how to maybe measure your cams and to what size stops. The limb stops, all the ones that I've seen for the Bowtechs and the Diamonds, the spacing between the holes is very similar on all of them. So the 2 sizes pretty much do everything on them. When we get into the cable stops of the other bows, then it's going to matter on how to measure and if you're actually long peg. So the idea is, to play, and you're going to find a sweet spot in here that you like. Again, like I said, the performance, you can't go much shorter, and it kind of gets to be unshootable. We can definitely go longer and make the bow a little more shootable, a little more relaxed in your hand, but still have the performance. If you have any more questions, you can get a hold of me through the website. There's a contact page. The website's www.lucky-stops.com. Check your dealer out, see if he has them. If he doesn't, have him get a hold of me. So again, these will fit all the Bowtech Carbon Icons, and I believe that's the only one left that they make with the limb stops on. The Diamond, Medalist 38, the Deploy, most of the diamonds with the limb stops on this will fit. And yeah, I'll leave you, the important thing is check your timing at full draw, because it will definitely make a difference on how these bows feel. Play with them, don't settle. Try it one day, go back and revisit it a month from when you set it up. One little tweak makes a big difference when you're shooting. So hopefully it helps your shooting. And until the next video, keep shooting.